The room pulsed with laughter and clinking glasses, but my pulse hammered louder, a frantic drumbeat in my ears. My wife Lila had orchestrated this surprise party with the precision of a symphony conductor, her smile radiant as she wove through the crowd, her auburn hair catching the glow of fairy lights strung across our living room. Everyone was here, friends, neighbors, even my old college buddy Tom, who'd flown in from Chicago. But then I saw him. Her boss, Richard, leaning against the kitchen counter, his tailored blazer too sharp for our cozy suburban home, his eyes lingering on Lila a beat too long. My stomach twisted, a cold, sour knot. What was he doing here? I forced a grin, accepting a beer from Tom, the glass slick against my palm. The room smelled of Lila's lavender candles and the catered bruschetta, but the air felt thick, like I was breathing through a wet cloth. Lila caught my eye, her smile faltering for a split second before she raised her wineglass in a toast. To Ethan, the best husband a woman could ask for. The crowd cheered, but her words landed like stones in my chest. I nodded, my throat tight, and scanned the room again. Richard was still there, sipping a whiskey, his gaze darting to Lila as she laughed with a neighbor. A prickle of unease crawled up my spine, sharp and insistent, like a splinter I couldn't quite reach. The party churned on, a blur of small talk and birthday candles. I turned 35 today, but the milestone felt hollow, overshadowed by a nagging question I couldn't shake. Lila had never mentioned inviting Richard. She'd worked for him at the law firm for 3 years, always praising his mentorship, his late-night strategy sessions that kept her at the office past dinner. I'd never questioned it. She was ambitious, driven, the kind of woman who lit up a room with her conviction. But now, watching her glance at him, a quick, guarded flicker of her eyes, I wondered what else I'd missed. I maneuvered through the crowd, the hardwood floor creaking under my sneakers, and approached Lila. She was refilling a tray of appetizers, her hands steady but her lips pressed tight. "Great party," I said, keeping my tone light, though my heart thudded like a fist against a door. "Didn't know you invited Richard." Her fingers froze on a cheese cube, just for a moment, before she resumed arranging the tray. "Oh yeah," she said, her voice bright but brittle like thin ice. "He's been so supportive at work. I thought it'd be nice to include him." She met my eyes, her green irises steady, but there was a shadow there, a flicker of something unspoken. I wanted to believe her, to let the warmth of her smile dissolve the doubt gnawing at me. But the air between us felt charged, like the moment before a storm breaks. The night wore on, and I played the part of the grateful husband, laughing at Tom's bad jokes, cutting the cake Lila had baked, chocolate with raspberry filling my favorite. But my eyes kept finding Richard. He lingered on the edges, never fully joining the group, his presence like a smudge on a clean window. Once I caught him checking his phone, his thumb pausing over a message before he pocketed it, his expression unreadable. I told myself it was nothing. Lila was loyal. She'd planned this party, hadn't she? She'd kissed me that morning, her lips soft and familiar, whispering, "I love you, Ethan." But doubt is a quiet poison, seeping into cracks you didn't know were there. By 10, the crowd had thinned, leaving a scattering of empty cups and crumpled napkins. Lila was in the kitchen, stacking dishes, when Richard approached her. I was across the room, helping Tom with his coat, but I saw it. The way he leaned in, his voice low, her head tilting toward him like a flower to the sun. My chest tightened, a vice squeezing my ribs. I excused myself and moved closer, the hum of the dishwasher masking their words. But I caught fragments. "Need to talk," from him, and her sharp whispered, "Not now." My blood ran cold, the room tilting like a ship in a storm. "Lila," I called, my voice sharper than I intended. She turned, her face a mask of calm, but her hands gripped the counter's edge, knuckles white. Richard stepped back, offering me a polite nod, his smile as smooth as glass. "Great party, Ethan," he said, his voice warm, professional. "You're a lucky man." The words felt like a taunt, though his expression gave nothing away. He left shortly after, his departure quiet, unremarkable. But it left a void, a space where questions festered. When the last guest left, Lila and I were alone, the house silent except for the faint drip of the kitchen faucet. I stood in the living room, staring at the fairy lights, their glow now harsh, exposing every flaw in the room. The scuff on the wall, the frayed edge of the rug. Lila came up behind me, her arms slipping around my waist. "Did you have fun?" she asked, her voice soft coaxing. I turned, searching her face for the woman I'd married. The one who'd cried during our vows, who'd laughed at my terrible cooking. She was there, but so was someone else, someone guarded, distant. "Why was Richard here, Lila?" I asked, my voice low, steady, though my heart was a wild thing clawing at its cage. Her eyes widened, just a fraction, before she smiled, too bright, too quick. "I told you I thought it'd be nice. He's my boss, Ethan. He's part of my life." Her words were reasonable, but they felt rehearsed, like lines from a script she'd practiced in her head. I wanted to let it go, to sink into her embrace and forget the unease that clung to me like damp clothes. But I couldn't. "I saw you talking to him," I said, my voice tightening. "In the kitchen. What was that about?" Her smile faltered, and for a moment she looked cornered, her eyes darting to the side before returning to mine. "It was work stuff," she said, her tone clipped. "A case we're handling. Nothing you'd care about." The lie was subtle, a hairline crack in her voice, but I felt it. I stepped closer, my breath shallow. "Don't lie to me, Lila." The words came out raw, jagged, tearing through the quiet. Her face crumpled, just for a second, before she straightened, her jaw set. "I'm not lying," she said, but her voice trembled, and her eyes glistened with something, guilt, fear, or both. The next hour was a blur of accusations and deflections, our voices rising, then falling, like waves crashing against a crumbling shore. She swore there was nothing between her and Richard, that I was paranoid, that the stress of my job was making me see things that weren't there. But her phone, left on the counter, buzzed once, then twice, and when I glanced at it, I saw his name. Richard. A message. "We need to figure this out." My world tilted, the ground slipping beneath me. "Lila," I said, holding up the phone, my hand shaking. "What the hell is this?" Her face drained of color, her mouth opening, then closing, like a fish gasping for air. "It's not what you think," she whispered. But the words were hollow, a plea more than a defense. I scrolled through the messages, my vision blurring, late-night texts, vague references to meetings. A photo of her in a dress I didn't recognize, sent to him with a smiley face. Each word was a knife, carving away the trust I'd built over years. The truth unraveled in fragments, each one more painful than the last. It wasn't an affair, she insisted, not physical, but emotional. A connection that had grown in the long hours at the office, in the shared stress of high-stakes cases. She turned to him, she said, because I'd been distant, buried in my own work, my own doubts. "I didn't mean for it to happen," she sobbed, her hands covering her face. "I love you, Ethan. I swear I do." I wanted to believe her, to cling to the love we'd built, but the betrayal was a living thing, coiling around my heart. I saw every moment we'd shared. Our first date, our wedding, the quiet nights on the couch, tainted now, fractured by her secrets. I sank onto the couch, the weight of it all pressing me into the cushions. "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "Why him?" She had no answer, only tears, and in that silence, I felt the final crack in our marriage, a fault line too deep to mend. The fairy lights flickered, one bulb burning out with a faint pop, and I realized the party wasn't the surprise. The real shock was this. The woman I loved had become a stranger, and I'd been too blind to see it until now.